Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic state visit to the United States has begun a short while ago. He landed in New York, and shortly before leaving for his hotel, he was, of course, greeted by a large contingent of members of the Indian diaspora who were out there to receive him. This has, of course, been a routine sight in different parts of the world that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has traveled to. Members of the Indian diaspora always, of course, waiting in anticipation and giving him a grand reception everywhere that he's traveled. And that's, of course, a sight that has become all too familiar for us, who, of course, covered his visits to the United States as well in the past, starting from the end of 2014, where he first made his visit there as the Prime Minister of India. 9 years down the road, he's back in the United States, this time on an official state visit, which of course comes with its own series of protocols and rituals, and gives us an indication of the extent to which the ties between India and the United States have not only deepened, but also, of course, enjoy a distinct standing now than they perhaps might have in the past. Let's in fact go across to New York, where we're getting reactions from members of the Indian diaspora who welcomed Prime Minister Modi.
But I'm just excited that he's here and in America. It's really cool. I think it's very powerful and very strong of him to come here and kind of see the support that he has in America along with other countries worldwide. And I think it's going to be a very big movement for him to come here. Just that I support him and that he's doing a really good job.
It's the 20th of June, and we're here at the New York Palace to welcome Narendra Modi ji to New York City. We brought a few of the kids from middle school over here.
Yeah, we're really excited to see Narendra Modi ji, and it's going to be an amazing experience to finally meet him.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing to finally see Narendra Modi ji, and we're going to see talk about all the technological advances in India. So it's going to be amazing.
And we'll be able to see all the fascinating parts of government.
I think it's very important that he's visiting here, and he will be with Biden, and we are all going to the Washington D.C. I think it's a great, it will make a great impact on in U.S. also, as he's doing really great job globally as well, and he's helping out the actually whole world, you know, with his nice karma and his nice heart, and he's making India very proud.
Well, let me also go across to my colleague Rishabh. Rishabh, Prime Minister Modi did land a short while ago. There are, of course, Indians, members of the diaspora waiting for him outside the hotel for his arrival. And he has a series of important engagements that have been lined up for him later in the day. Tell us about the kind of people he's expected to meet. And this is all, of course, also in the build-up to International Yoga Day tomorrow.
Definitely, if you see minute after minute, every minute that Prime Minister will be staying in the United States, his schedule is jam-packed. There are right now 10 CEOs already waiting for Prime Minister in New York. He has just landed, has moved to the hotel where he'll be there for next 3 hours. He'll be briefed by the Indian Ambassador to the United States, Mr. Sandhu, as well as India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj. Both these officials will brief Prime Minister Narendra Modi about who all he's meeting, what's on agenda, and how and what lies ahead in New York, at least in the first leg of the state visit. Remember, he was scheduled to leave for Washington, D.C. just after the Yoga Day celebration, but then the diaspora came together, kept writing letters to PMO, and the Prime Minister had to oblige, and now he'll be staying 2 hours extra in New York just to meet the representatives of diaspora in New York as well. A diaspora event is already scheduled in Washington, D.C., but in New York as well, Prime Minister would be meeting the Indian diaspora after the Yoga Day celebration. So this shows that the euphoria around Prime Minister's visit, the excitement among diaspora. Remember, U.S. has 4.6 million strong Indian diaspora. This diaspora has added significantly to the economy, not only of US but even India, and that shows the connect between India and US. So a jam-packed next 24 hours for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where he'll be meeting CEOs, attending and leading the International Yoga Day at UN headquarters in New York, and then meeting the representatives of Indian diaspora before he leaves for Washington, D.C.
All right, let me just interrupt you there for a moment, Rishabh, because we're also being joined by author and columnist Kartikeya Tanna for his perspective on this historic visit. Mr. Tanna, thank you for joining us. What are your expectations and what are some of the tangibles that hopefully will materialize during the course of this historic visit on the part of Prime Minister Modi to the United States?
Well, I think, if you remember Mr. Modi's initial utterances about foreign policy and, what we thought of foreign policy before Modi and after Modi. Before Modi, it was, thought about, improving India's image, improving India's goodwill, soft power. I'm not saying there's no soft power. There is soft power component, but it's a very small component of it. And what Modi said, what he focused on was that foreign policy these days has to be about trade and investment, securing those relationships with other countries. Everything else just rotates around them. And I think he's been proven right time and again in his assessment. People might have thought that, he's only focusing on money and trade and investment. But that is essentially what brings prosperity to both nations. So, for example, the U.S. wants India to have a deal for, the weapons, so. And then the Prime Minister wants to improve India and U.S. bilateral trade ties.
Yes.
And there's also this talk about the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. So these are the focus areas that Mr. Modi and his government have consistently worked on in order to ensure that even the U.S. and India may not be uncompromised, unconditional allies in that sense, like, for example, the UK is of India. But at least India and US have so many shared values and interests that they can certainly leverage these things to the maximum capacity. And honestly, it's sky's the limit for that. They don't have to be aligned, so India is in a sense non-aligned. So the two countries don't have to be aligned on every matter, especially related to, other foreign powers, for example, Russia. The ongoing Russia war in Ukraine. Obviously India's public stand is different from what the American public stand is. But that doesn't mean that you do not cooperate and even co-opete. I use the word co-opete as kind of a combination of compete and cooperate at the same time between India and US. So and that's why his outreach to the CEOs of of major companies in America, essentially with the message that come invest in India, because in India you not only have an incredible market, a consumer market, but you also have infinite capacity of talent, skill, labor, and as well as good economic conditions for investment in business to thrive. And so I think his focus has been very clear, and since the day he took the Prime Minister's office, his focus has been extremely clear of how he wants to leverage this diplomacy and what he wants to focus on while engaging in diplomacy.
Absolutely. You touched upon a very important point there when you talked about the improvement in relations by way of trade between India and the United States.
Yes.
That's something that he emphasized in his interview to the Wall Street Journal as well, shortly before he left for New York, where he talked about the importance of the expansion of global supply chains as well. We'll come back to you, Mr. Tanna, but in the meantime, let's also, in fact, go across to my colleague, Sushant Sinha, who's been in the United States covering this historic visit on the part of Prime Minister Modi. And this is a ground report that he sent in from Times Square in New York.
His state visit in America is going to be a historic one. Not because it is important for India, but it is more important for America, which is struggling to revive from what happened here after COVID pandemic and what happened during Russia-Ukraine war. And if you talk about America, they are looking more eagerly to welcome Narendra Modi in Washington as well and sign some deals which are going to be a game changer, not for India but for America as well. And if you see, मैं इस वक्त यहाँ टाइम स्क्वायर पर हूँ और यहाँ पर सारी जगमगाहट जो है, लाइट्स हैं, बड़े बड़े स्क्रीन्स हैं, सब कुछ है, लोगों की भीड़ है। लेकिन अमेरिका में ये जो जगह चमचमा रही है, वो चमचमाहट अर्थव्यवस्था में, इकोनॉमी में नहीं है। और इसीलिए महंगाई यहाँ पर बहुत है, बैंक्स बंद हो रहे हैं, यहाँ पर लोगों की नौकरियां जा रही हैं। और जो बाइडेन प्रशासन जो है वो इस बात पर निर्भर कर रहा है कि कैसे इंडिया के साथ, जो दुनिया में ब्राइट स्पॉट बना हुआ है, इंडिया विच इज लीडिंग द वर्ल्ड, should also collaborate with America, which will bring jobs here, which will help in easing inflation, which will help Joe Biden government, making sure that people see them as they delivered what they promised.